Hey, welcome back, everyone, to a new episode of Ray Hall Talking College Ball. I'm your host, Ray Hall. Let's jump right into it. Big game breakdowns for the week. If you missed the Tuesday episode, I already broke down Alabama versus Oklahoma. So go check that out if you're looking for that specific breakdown. Um, but tonight we're going to start with another key matchup in the SEC. Texas traveling to Georgia. Georgia's laying 6.5, over under is 50.5 points. Um, it's been said a lot this week, but I'm just going to kind of echo the statement. When a lot of people were talking about realignment when it was first happening, Texas and Oklahoma moving to the SEC. Why are they doing this? They kind of had the clear path to dominate the Big 12 and everything like that. Well, one, money talks, but two, specifically this weekend. I mean, this is why they made that jump for matchups and games like this weekend. Um, it's I'm not sure if it was like this last year. I can't remember. I don't think it was. But having both the two newcomers, blue bloods, playing two other blue bloods in the SEC, and then also it's kind of serendipitous how it's worked out in the sense where Oklahoma and Texas are in the same situation, basically needing a win, needing to win out the rest of the season, but specifically needing a win on this Saturday to keep their playoff chances alive, versus two of the programs that have done it for the longest in the SEC. I can't remember the exact time frame. If I had to take a guess, it's probably 2010, maybe 2009. But since 2009, last 16 years, only 2 years, Georgia or Alabama hasn't won the SEC. Now, granted, Alabama is a vast majority of those, but pretty much every other year it was Georgia. They had those two LSU years in there, obviously. It might be three because now I'm thinking about it. You had, it might only be two. Um, but anyways, kind of looking at this game, Georgia and Texas, their seasons have gone vastly different in a way. Texas kind of had high expectations for their quarterback and Arch Manning, and they've kind of faltered, and he hasn't performed to at least the level people expected of him. And with Georgia and Gunnar Stockton, the expectation was, hey, can he be a game manager? Can he kind of distribute the ball? Can he make sure that our offense stays on schedule and lets our defense kind of win us games? And Gunnar Stockton he's turned into a playmaker, a baller. Like he makes plays in big moments. Specifically, if you go back to that Tennessee game on fourth down, he throws that fade and it just drops in the bucket. Like you have to have it in that moment. Needed six, he got it all, got a touchdown. Then got the 2 point conversion, or is either they kicked the extra point there. I can't remember to tie the game up. But every time Gunnar Stockton's been called on, with the exception of the Alabama game, and if you're a Georgia fan, you're probably saying, well, they took the ball out of his hands and ran a stupid play with their third down back, running it on fourth down, however that may be. Um, every time Gunnar Stockton's been asked to step up, he has. He's risen to the moment. Um, their offense has improved, but so has Texas's offense. Now, both teams have solid defenses. I would say Texas definitely has the edge on the defensive side of the ball, but you feel more comfortable and confident in Georgia's offense. So, it these teams are oddly similar in a way where their offensive schemes is okay. Let's give the ball to our playmakers and make people tackle them in open space. And cool, if they don't tackle them in open space, they get 4 yards, 5 yards. We keep the drive rolling. But if they miss that tackle, it turns to explosive play, and that's when we can start running up the score, start really taking advantage of this. So, um, I think it comes down to, if you had to pick a side in this game, not talking about the spread, you have to go with Georgia. And I'm not saying Georgia's going to win, or I think Georgia's going to win, but if you had to take a side, it's going to be Georgia in this case, and that's really just because Steve Sarkisian hasn't had the best record against these big time coaches in big time games. Kirby Smart, if it's not Alabama on the other side of the field, he rises to the moment and he wins these games. Georgia just kind of stays in the game, stays around long enough, and then right when it's nut cutting time, they take advantage of it and they rise to the moment. But I think 6.5, that's a lot of points in my opinion. I kind of like Texas in this game. I think they understand the magnitude of this, especially knowing like, hey, we have A&M to close the year out. and A&M doesn't look gettable, so we kind of need to get this one right here. Granted, A&M's at home, Texas is on the or Georgia's on the road, so maybe you can still get A&M when they come and travel into your stadium. But I think it has to be a week by week basis, obviously, for these programs. But they have to look at this game and like, okay, we have to get this game. um, if they finish the year 10-2, going through this final last 3 weeks, they're a shoe in for the playoff. Might even work themselves into a bye situation if you kind of look out how it's going to play out. But if you look at a 9-3 team with the win over number 5 Georgia, or even at that point number 3 A&M, they're still in a really good chance. And as much as we don't want to talk about it, there is some of that bias when it comes to these big names and big brands. Last year they tried to get Alabama in. It really shouldn't have been a discussion, but since of Alabama's pedigree and the brand name, I think that's why it was a discussion. But in all honesty, like if you're a Big 12 team or an ACC team and try and get an at-large bid, the last thing you want is for Texas to win one of Georgia or one against A&M. So, with all that being said, I think Georgia's defense isn't what it was last year. Now, Texas' offense isn't what it was last year, but I don't think they're going to be able to put the pressure and the absolute get after Arch and kind of put him in these terrible situations. I think Sarkisian knows exactly what he has in Arch, and he's going to, design some quick bubbles, kind of like how you saw them open up against the Vanderbilt game. Some easy throws, get him into a groove. Arch is now 2 or 3 weeks removed from the concussion. I think 3 weeks removed from concussion now. So his feet, his legs are going to be definitely a factor in this game. I'm not picking it, at least aside. If I had to, I would lean going Texas plus 6.5. I think the margins in the SEC are close every week. And you can say it's because there's great SEC teams. There's not teams that separate from the pack. Whatever it may be, the margins are still close. I am leaning towards the over in this game. I think if I was going to pick it, I would go on the over 50.5. All right, next game we're going to go to is, and sorry if you see me messing around over here, my dog needs some attention. But if your next game we're going to go to is the Notre Dame at Pittsburgh game. Pitt catching 12.5 at home. If you've been watching the show, following the show, you know I've been talking about this game for the past 3 or 4 weeks. I've kind of circled it on the calendar. I was like, hey, this is one I circled on the calendar because it's really the biggest test that Notre Dame had left. If you wanted to say undefeated or at the then undefeated Navy. Actually, I think they caught a loss before then. So one loss Navy. That could have been a big game. Notre Dame can just out-athlete them. And it's not one of these surprise games. It's a game that's on their schedule practically every year. You know it's coming, so that triple option isn't going to get them when you're aware of it, and then also you can just out-athlete them. But I've been circling this Pitt game because this is kind of their biggest final test, after the USC game, obviously. But there's a way you can say Pitt's a bigger test than USC. And the way I say that is because Coach Narduzzi, Pat Narduzzi, he has spoke about it. Bud Elliott covered it on the Cover 3 podcast earlier, I think today or Thursday. But he believes in the mindset of, hey, I'm playing against college quarterbacks. A lot of time, pressure gets to these guys. I'm sending 6. I'm blitzing. I'm doing this nonstop. Like my status quo defense, my base defense is sending 6. Now, Notre Dame's really good at picking up blitzes. CJ Carr can go over the top. He's been proven to be a proficient passer. But Coach Narduzzi's been doing this for a while, and I feel like he has some exotic schemes he can do to get after Notre Dame. I think on the other side of the ball, we've been hearing about how Notre Dame's defense has improved. They had to switch some things up, but since week 2 against A&M when they gave up 40-plus points, they've improved their defense. I think their defense has improved. I don't think it's as improved as it looks if you look at the stat sheets. I think they've played lesser competition. The USC game, that's really the only offense I can put up against them where I'm like, yep, this is a solid offense. And it was a good outing, but I think USC left a lot of points out there on the board. And then also Notre Dame was kind of able to just kind of control the game. So this game's going to go one of two ways, in my opinion. Notre Dame's going to win by 20 or Pitt's going to win the game. Pitt, the way they play on offense, it's tempo, it's fast. Let's get moving. We'll get a first down. Okay, let's start going. Let's get on the ball and get you guys in bad situations. And then on defense, like I already mentioned, they bring pressure. If they bring pressure and Notre Dame's able to go over the top against them, then this game could just blow wide open, especially if Pitt isn't able to answer on offense. So as most times, and you'll hear this from every analyst, but the opening drives of this game are really important for Pitt. Any underdog, especially a double score, a double digit slash double score underdog, it's going to be important to get out there and start the game off fast. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you have to start coming from behind, especially like a team against Notre Dame who has that backfield of Love and Price who can just lean on those guys, give the rock to them 30 times a game, and you'll probably finish with around 300 yards. So it's if I'm a Notre Dame fan, I'm not saying I should be nervous, but hey, this is kind of your last, like this is like the last step before you get to the top of the mountain and you can take a break before you go to the next one, which would be the college football playoffs. If I'm Pitt, you kind of got to like what your coach said about this game in the sense of like, what does this game mean? Absolutely nothing. You know, they're not in the ACC. This isn't an ACC law. So, I mean, what does this game mean? Because at the end of the day, one, he's right. Coach Narduzzi is right when he says that. But also, two, he's coming into the mindset of the game of like, hey, we're going to play loose and we're going to go out there and try and win. But at the end of the day, if we don't, we'll move forward. This isn't going to define our season, but our guys are going to come in loose but still ready to play. So that's kind of where I'm leaning in this one. Another game where I don't love anything, but I've been harping the Pitt plus 12.5 / Pitt money line. I'm definitely sprinkling some money line here for Pitt, but I've been harping about how this game Notre Dame needs to watch out or they're going to get got. So I'm going to take Pitt plus 12.5. I'm looking at the overall, so I'll probably do a live bet situation on that. Hopefully both teams stall out in their first drives, can get that total down to around 50, and then I'll take it there. It's sitting at 53.5, so we'll have to see, but that's how I'm feeling for that game. All right, next game we're going to cover is Iowa at USC. Trojans minus 6.5, over under 49.5. I guess South California got a little jealous of the game that Iowa just played with Oregon in Iowa and wanted to get some rain going, so they called up the government and put some artificial clouds out there and got a rainy game on Saturday. This game, people are saying that, hey, this Iowa defense, like, does it have a weakness? Like, can they not stop the run like they've been able to in years past? Like, one, they're not as good as years past in the front, which is okay. They're still very solid up there. Two, you're saying it after the Oregon game. If you look at some of the metrics on Oregon's run game, it's probably top 3 in the country at least. You can argue and say it's number 1. I'd probably be one of the people arguing saying it's number 1, but it's hard when you get to that level and trying to compare opponents and whatnot to actually give someone definitively the number 1 spot. But Oregon can run the shit out of the ball, and they did that against Iowa. Do I think USC is going to do the same exact thing that Oregon did? No, but do I think they can get them on the ground? Yes. And here's the thing also that USC has that Oregon didn't have. Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane out there, their receivers are healthy and they're ready to play. So I'm interested to see if Iowa can do it 2 weeks in a row, making, I don't want to throw out the narrative there again, but the West Coast old Pac-12 teams, can you bring them down to an old-fashioned Big Ten West game? But that's kind of what they need to do here. They need to make this game an ugly game, and you can't have any confidence if USC scores over 20 points, a game's over. So you gotta muddy it up. With that being said, I'm leaning USC in this. Definitely leaning USC to win on the field, but also at the counter. 6.5, that's a touchdown. I think Iowa kind of had they've been in so many tight emotional games this year, with the exception of the Minnesota game, the Minnesota win they had, but that was a rivalry game that they were playing up for. It's hard to keep playing up for it. And then also traveling The jet lag doesn't matter as much when you're going west, but still it'll be a factor. Uh, yeah, so that's all I have on that game. Next thing we're going to cover is USF at Navy. And if you're wondering why I haven't covered certain games before this, I'm kind of just going down the way I looked at the list and be like, yep, this is a game I want to cover. And then I started doing my research. And then I moved down the list based off of like the time zones, everything like that. So there's a good chance I probably get to your game. Also a chance I don't. But these are the games that kind of caught my interest. But this next game, USF at Navy. This is pretty big for USF. They just got ranked 24 in the college football playoff after being unranked. They can't afford another slip up here, not because it would affect their ranking. That is probably true, but then they would be a 2-loss American, and that top of the American is filled, I think, with 5 or 6 one-loss teams. So then they would basically take their fate out of their hands. Navy's catching 9.5 at home. The reason why I'm bringing this game up is two completely different styles on offense, but also very similar in a sense. They both, kind of like how I mentioned with Georgia and Texas, they both want to make the right read and tackle people. They want to put you in situations where it's like, okay, hey, are you doing your job? If you're doing your job, cool. Now you have to make the tackle. You make the tackle, you do your job. We're getting 0 yards, maybe a yard on this play. But the actual overall scheme of it is completely different. Navy obviously runs a triple option. USF kind of does these wide splits. But it's really the same premise of like, hey, we're going to make people have to tackle that don't usually like to tackle, and we're going to put them in situations where there's some eye candy and there's a numbers advantage on our side and see what happens. Last year, Navy beat USF, and the reason why I think this is a bad matchup for USF is they're a tempo team. If a tempo team goes 3 and out, and then they go and punt the ball to Navy, and Navy goes on a, excuse me for a second, and then Navy goes on a 12-minute drive, your offense is staying off the field, not getting in sync, kind of getting cold, waiting for their chance again, and then Navy just got points. All right, now that second drive, so you go 3 and out again. All right, obviously time of possession is a big factor. It's one of the things I value most when I'm picking teams, but I also think you need to have efficiency with your actual drives and time of possession. But in a game like this, how many possessions is USF going to get? And if they are clicking on offense and they come out firing, and their defense is able to stop the triple option, then they could get 15 possessions, and this could be a complete bloodbath. But they come out not firing all the cylinders. Navy's able to use this triple option, work down the field, keep these drives going, get it to 3rd and short, 4th and 1 type situations. Then this could be a game where USF has 7, 8 possessions. And if you're only 30% effective on your drives and Navy's 50, then Navy's going to blow you out. So that's why you got to be careful with these kind of games. I don't have a pick in this game. I would lean kind of towards the over. I think USF is going to be able to get it. I think their defense is going to have a chip on their shoulder after what Navy did to them last year. So I think it's going to be a high possession game. But if it's halftime and it's a close game and you see like, well, USF only had, like it's a 14-17 game at halftime, or maybe even like a 10-14 game, and you're like, wow, USF's only had 4 possessions. They've only scored twice. You got to start putting up your alerted eyes and being like, hey, this could go wrong in the second half for them. All right, next game we're going to cover is NC State at Miami. Miami laying 15.5, over under 55.5. Coach Dave Doran, he's a great coach at NC State. He kind of already had their marquee win against Georgia Tech this year, but I'm not counting him out for getting another one done. I'll preface this. I'm going to go through all of my picks for this weekend at the very end, but I'm taking the Wolfpack plus 15.5. Miami kind of runs this offense or the way they have their team set up is they want low variance. Basically meaning in college football specifically, the more possessions you have, the more chances for opportunities, or not actually opportunities, the more chances you have for mistakes, especially in a situation where you have Carson Beck, who is turnover prone, but just in general. It's different when you have like very elite, efficient quarterbacks like Julian Sayin, Ty Simpson, and you've heard me talk about how, yes, their teams do this, exact scheme where they kind of try and shrink the game because they can make their possessions count more, and they're better at doing that than their opponent. So that's why it works in their favor. But Miami's trying to do this, and I think it's strategic on their part. And I think Coach Cristobal is doing a good job of saying like, hey, let's not do what we did last year and try to have our quarterback Cam Ward, who they wasted a great season from, go out there and score 50 by himself. Let's try and control these games a little bit more. Not fully like rely and be a defensive team, but also like, hey, let's make sure our offensive drives count. If we're going out there on we're gonna get positive yards. We're gonna try and cross the field, and at the very least try and set up a good field position flip for our defense. But at least try and get points on the board for every drive. So when you have a team like that playing against NC State, a well-coached team, and they also have C.J. Bailey, who everyone's projecting to make probably close to $4 million next year in the transfer portal. You don't want to take those chances in a sense where, hey, if they're like I was mentioning earlier with the Navy USF game, if they're 50% effective on their drives and you're 40% effective on your drives, you're going to lose that game. So if you can kind of get those margins down where it's like, hey, we can do a coin flip basically on this, that's where you want to be. But I'm taking the Wolfpack plus 15.5. Next game I'm going to cover is the late night snack. I don't think it's actually the latest game. Latest Power 4 game, though, is Utah at Baylor. I wanted to cover this one because a lot of people are questioning why Utah is still ranked. Utah is a really good team. Maybe not questioning why they're still ranked, but why they're ranked where they're at, which I think is around the 13 mark. I think even for me, that was a little high. I had them around 15. I know why the committee has them there. If you look at the profile of this team, this is a elite offensive line team, very good defensive on this whole side of the defense, very good team. And then Devin Dampierre, he has had flashes where he has shown that, like, yes, he can be very like uber efficient, both with his arm and his legs, and put points on the board. So they obviously Coach Whittingham, you don't need to talk about him. Everyone knows about his record, his tenure, his reputation, everything like that. Great coach there. Always runs a solid program. But so I think he's getting some love in that sense. But I wanted to cover this game specifically because Dave Aranda at Baylor was on the hot seat last year. He kind of saved his season by going on a win streak towards the end of the year. And I think he's in a similar situation where he kind of needs to do that again. I also think there is some behind the scene things going on with their athletic director just being released and also removed from the College Football Playoff Committee. So I think they're trying to keep Aranda there to kind of stabilize the ship that's kind of shaky as it is. But also I think they're looking around and it's like, okay, who are we competing against in the job market right now if we were to fire Aranda? Well, we're going against Penn State, going against LSU, Florida, now Auburn, Arkansas, Virginia Tech, Oklahoma State, UCLA. Those last three, especially UCLA, you don't really have to compete with directly. And you're not competing with the first five I mentioned because they're just in a whole class above you. But even in the best case scenario, you're getting the sixth best coach available. And also, a lot of these coaches that are at the G5 level don't want to take the jump to the Power 4 unless it's to a Power 2 conference. I don't think it's going to happen, but there's still this theory that the Power 2 is just going to break off and these other teams will be left behind. I don't think that's going to happen. I think cooler heads are going to prevail. There's going to be some smart people in the room that are like, hey, no, we're not going to ruin the sport. Let's fix this and let's get this, kind of figured out. But still, I think Baylor's keeping Aranda because they don't want him, because they just can't compete in the open job market right now. Additionally, though, another reason why I cut this game is Sawyer Robinson. He's one of the best quarterbacks in college football. You just don't hear about him because, one, he plays for Baylor in the Big 12, and two, they're not like an elite team in the Big 12, so he's not getting these primetime games. But I think he's going to be able to kind of stress this Utah defense, and he's a guy that's going to be draft eligible, and he's going to fly up a draft boards because he's going to look great in shorts. He's going to be able to go to the combine, do his pro day, and he's going to be able to throw it all over the yard, make every single throw possible. So I think he's going to do great things for his draft stock when it comes to the actual mock draft season, as we like to call it. But Utah, the reason why they're still ranked because of that offensive line, I think they're going to be able to manhandle Baylor, kind of similar to how Auburn manhandled that Baylor front in the first game of the year. Um, but I also think Sawyer's going to be able to keep them in this game. So I'm expecting points in this game. All right, next game we're going to cover is TCU at BYU. Over under is 50.5, and that's a key over under right there because TCU kind of falls under the old model of the Big 12 where they play these shootout style games. So BYU was trying to make the game last week against Texas Tech fall into their plan, and they were somewhat successful, holding Texas Tech to a lot of field goals in the red zone. Texas Tech scored 29. It was never really close, but it's not like they absolutely just ran away with the game. But BYU needs to make this game their style again. They need to have this game played the way they want it to be played. Because if they get in a shootout, Josh Hoover is one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch in college football. One, because he's fearless with where the windows he tries to fit in. You should watch some of the windows, especially on these double slant looks he has. He's just putting it right next to the linebacker's heads, just fitting into the receiver. There's just not even a second thought about it. And I think TCU is in a point where they can get BYU this weekend. I'm leaning BYU TCU plus 3.5, but I'm also leaning towards the over. I think once again, Big 12 football game. If you know me, I like betting overs. So maybe stay away, but I think the over is in play here. All right, next game we're going to cover is Virginia at Duke. This is the last game I'm covering for the night, so if I didn't cover a game you wanted me to, I'm sorry. But I want to cover this game is because it's the number one team in the ACC versus the actual number one team in the ACC. It's a weird dynamic in that sense. Duke has 4 losses. Only one of them is in conference. They kind of look like people are still picking them to win the ACC regardless of their out-of-conference schedule, and it's because if you look at the games they've played, one, they've gotten very unlucky, and that some teams are just snake-bitten each year, and they're just going to get unlucky. That UConn just beat them, but specifically looking at the Georgia Tech game, the way they're able to move the ball in between the 20s, and then just costly turnovers in the red zone, and then also the Illinois game. Very similar, probably not to the same extent. I think Illinois is also just a better team than Georgia Tech that day on how they were playing. I'm not saying Illinois is better than Georgia Tech right now, but that day they were playing better than Georgia Tech played against Duke. So that game, it was higher variance in that sense. But Duke's able to move the ball. Virginia, good news for them. Chandler Morris looks like he's going to play. No, he participated in practice. This line, 5.5, kind of indicates he's going to play, in my opinion. The over-under being 59.5 indicates he's going to play. So that has to be good news. If you're a Cavaliers fan, you got to think that, okay, we're going to have our starting quarterback out there. So good on you for that. In all honesty, I think Virginia's been kind of a nice story. I think Duke is just a better football team. Tony Elliott's done a great job there. He's had to deal with some tragedy in the program and everything like that. The way he's been able to come back from that, keep his team focused, but also show his respect to the lives he lost from some of his players. A great job to him, but I think Duke is just the better football team. They're playing at Duke. I'm taking the Blue Devils in this game. All right, that includes the big game breakdown, as we like to call it. In all honesty, I'm not going to call it a big game breakdown probably moving forward. I'm going to try and find a new name for the segment. So if you have any suggestions, let me know. I've been kind of going with the alliterations like Ray's responses, Ray's ratings, Ray's rankings. So if you can think of something like that, let me know. But it's not the games that are always going to be the biggest. I don't think I didn't cover the Ohio State game. I didn't cover the Indiana game. I didn't cover the Texas A&M game. I'm not covering all these top teams. One, it's good matchups, and then also it's just games and matchups that intrigue me, and or kind of the secondary implications of these games. So we'll have to think of a good name for that. But all right, we're moving to my actual card for the weekend and what I'm taking. These lines were off of FanDuel about 2 hours ago. So current as of Thursday the 13th at around 8 p.m. Eastern time. This is when I pick these lines. But we're going to start out with Arkansas plus 5.5 going against LSU. I think the interim bump was a lot of energy was exerted last week against Alabama. I think they kind of let go of the rope here, let the boulder roll back down the hill in that metaphor. Arkansas By Petrino's still trying to coach for his job, so I think he's going to get that offense scoring points. And I think the only thing that was keeping LSU in games was the defense, and I think it kind of all comes crumbling down this weekend. And I think also Arkansas, if they win this game, there's a good chance that I know there's a lot of talk going on X about wow Arkansas if they get this done, like the eyes emoji, and not mentioning like what coach they're talking about. But I still think they don't have a clear plan cut ahead. So I think Petrino's still in run there. I already mentioned it, but I'm taking Pitt plus 12.5. Probably looking to live bet that total. But like I said, I think Narduzzi's defense will cause enough problems to a point where they have to kind of play catch up, as in Notre Dame has to play catch up, and Mitch Hensel is going to be able to, or Henchman. I'm going to mispronounce his name like 6 more times. Quarterback for Pitt, the freshman that's came in, he's run that offense really well. He's given a nice shot of energy to this team. So I do worry about the scaling problem. They've been playing the lower half of ACC teams, so probably teams ranked in like the 70s and 80s of all of college football. Now they're about to play a top 10, possibly top 5 team, just based off of like ratings and rankings in that sense. So they may not be able to scale there, but I think Narduzzi was calculated when he said, this game doesn't matter. I think he's kind of trying to play it cool and set something up bigger. Next game I have is Oregon State minus 2.5. Oregon State gave Sam Houston State their first win last week, despite, outgaining them like almost 2-1. They're going to Tulsa on the road, but Tulsa's a dead program. It honestly surprises me that I'm not going to say it. I just like Oregon State. The Beavers minus 2.5 in that game. I already mentioned this pick, NC State plus 15.5. I like CJ Bailey. I think he's going to be able to keep it close. Dave Doeren, he doesn't have the studs he usually has on the defensive side of the ball, but he's still a good coach scheming it up. I think they'll be able to put some interesting looks together for Carson Beck to kind of get the ball and put it in danger. Next pick is Maryland, Illinois over 59.5. Illinois has just been an over machine this year. Maryland, if they want a shot at this game, they're going to have to score 25, 30 points. So I don't think they have a chance. Mike Loxley's kind of in that same boat as Dave Aranda. It's like, well, we don't want to be the 6th or 7th best job open, so let's wait for next cycle. But their quarterback there, that's another reason they're probably hoping that if Loxley stays, they can keep the quarterback. And the number 1 recruit edge they have from, I think he's in the state of Maryland, is committed there. So hopefully they're thinking if we keep Loxley, we can keep these recruits and keep these players. And then mention this on the Tuesday show, but I'm taking Alabama, Oklahoma over 45.5. I think this is not an official on my card pick yet. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put it on there. I have 11 picks. I need 12 anyways, just because I like the number 12 more than 11. But I'm going to take Alabama minus 5.5. I think Alabama's going to be able to get some short fields. I think Alabama's offense, yes, it hasn't looked the best, but it's also been not like there hasn't been open guys. They haven't had opportunities. It's been like, okay, the ball was just a slight overthrow, or there was a drop, or the receiver kind of took the wrong angle on this. This could have been a touchdown, where the pressure just needed to hold up for a nanosecond longer, and they would have gotten it out. So I'm going to take Alabama minus 5.5 and the over in that game, 45.5. Mentioned this a pick already. I think I said the line was 5.5, but on FanDuel it's 4.5. So maybe I'm betting against some sharp money there. But Duke minus 4.5. I just think they're the better team. I think Darian Mensah is the better quarterback in this matchup, regardless of who plays for the Cavs. So laying the points with Duke at home. Next game, Memphis, East Carolina over 58.5. I love East Carolina. I think they have a goal. This is just based off watching them when they're like, hey, we want to try and run 90 plays today. Like our offense, we need to run 90 plays. We need to be going and going. Memphis, I believe Brendan Lewis is going to be healthy enough to play. If not, their backup was serviceable, and they have enough studs on the outside where they can kind of just throw it up to him and hope something happens. Mentioned this play. I think I actually said the other way around, so maybe I'll take it off my card. I don't know. I have Utah Baylor under 60.5 written down, though. We'll keep it on the card just for 12, and obviously cooler heads will prevail. was seeing something, maybe talk myself into something else. It's kind of like on a multiple choice test. When you circle the first answer, you never want to erase and go to your second answer because it's always the first answer was right. So I'm keeping it Utah Baylor under 16.5. My mindset on that is probably Utah's defense is going to be able to shut down Sawyer Robinson, and they don't want to make this high variance games. They're going to get some clock control, some game control going on the offensive side of the ball, and just try and pound the rock. All right, I mentioned this pick earlier, Texas plus 6.5. I think it's SEC close margins. I like the Longhorns in a close game. Uh, Sark's big game struggles do worry me, but I think he's going to at least. Both teams have historically started slow this season, but I think coming off of the bye week, he's been really putting in some plays where he's like, okay, we need to get this going. And then I don't want to say a letdown spot for Georgia, but this game just doesn't mean as much as it does to Texas. So that's why I'm taking the Longhorns plus 6.5. Then I also mentioned this one earlier in our big game breakdowns, but taking the Horned Frogs plus 3.5. I think Josh Hoover's going to be able to take advantage of that defense, and I think they're going to be able to get them. This one, I'll look at the total. You know what? Lucky number 13. Add it to my card. I'm going to take TCU, BYU over 50.5. The more I think about it, I think that's probably the right side as well. So writing the Horned Frogs and the over. Better than writing the favorite and the under. Shout out my friend Ziller out there. He knows that comment. Me and him have both been burned way too many times taking a favorite in the under, and then we can never win both bets based off of the first half outcome because either the team needs to score 13 points to cover, or there needs to be less than 10 points scored, so the under hits. But it's a brutal situation. I wouldn't take all your advice from a guy like Ziller, though. He likes to tease past 0, which is a huge no-no. So be careful, be wary out there. Don't let your friends tease past 0, all right? If you do, ostracize them, call them out for it, make fun of them, call them names. That's allowed. Teasing past 0 is a cardinal sin. It shouldn't be ever done. Thank you guys for tuning into this episode. Sorry for the last episode when I exported it from the service I use. It had all the graphics outlaid on it and ready to go. I play it on my screen here. It's ready to go. And then the video I uploaded to YouTube didn't have the graphics or my banner in there. I don't know what I'm going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again, but I'm going to try and make sure that doesn't happen again. That's just completely unsat by me. So hold me to that. If you see that happen, leave a comment being like, yo, Ray, where the fuck are the graphics? Like, what's going on here? Looks like shit. We're just staring at your ugly mug the entire time, and we need pretty pictures here. Leave something in the comments so I can try and catch that and get that taken care of before I don't want to say it's too late because I can still do it now, but before the statute of limitation will run out, and I don't, I guess, care about it as much because the people that have seen it have already seen it. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, please like the video. Follow me on X at RayHall_CFB. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Please leave comments. Mailbags are on Tuesday. Not mailbags, excuse me. Ray's responses. I want to start using these terminologies I'm coining for my show. Ray's responses are on Tuesdays after I kind of go over the college football playoff, my college football playoff rankings, my projected, and do usually 1 or 2 game breakdowns for the weekend. I'll hit the mailbag and answer some of these questions I'm getting asked. But appreciate you guys for tuning in. And yeah, thanks. Have a good weekend.